Footsteps at night. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just the house settling. A faint, rhythmic sound late at night. Nothing too alarming. I had just moved into this old place on the edge of town. Creaky wood floors, high ceilings, all the charm of something built before modern insulation existed. I was alone, which was the whole point. I needed space, peace, but the peace didn't last long. Each night, as I was falling asleep, I'd hear it. Footsteps, soft at first, almost like someone pacing, then louder, clearer, like someone walking through the hall, down into the kitchen, then silence. I'd get up, check every door and window, all locked, nothing disturbed, but the footsteps came back, night after night. I told myself it was just pipes, or maybe my mind playing tricks. Then one night, I set up a recorder. Next morning, I listened back and froze. Footsteps, clear as day, slow, heavy, deliberate, and something else. Faint whispering, indistinct, but there. That's when I called a paranormal investigation group. I didn't even care how it sounded anymore. They came, set up their cameras, recorders, everything. The next day they said, "We picked up some creaking. Could just be the house." But I knew better. The footsteps didn't stop. One night, I heard them right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. I listened. Then I opened the door. Nothing. But the air felt wrong. I started sleeping with lights on, keeping music playing to drown out the silence. Then one day, I found something in the attic. A journal, belonged to the previous owner. Inside, they wrote about hearing footsteps, feeling watched, just like me. The final entry said, "The echoes won't stop." Then it just ended. I still live here. The footsteps still come. But now, I talk back, just in case. Someone is listening. Let's keep going. This one hits closer to home. Story 4. The Missing Cat. Whiskers was always waiting for me at the door. Every time I came home, she'd run up, purring, brushing against my legs. She was more than a pet. She was family. But one day, I came home to silence. No purring, no sound, no whiskers. I searched every room, every corner of the house. Nothing. I went outside, calling her name, shaking the treat bag. Still nothing. I put up flyers, asked neighbors, posted online. Days passed, a week, then 2. Still nothing. Just when I was starting to give up, I heard a faint meow on the front porch. It was her. But she wasn't the same. She was limping. Her fur was dirty, matted. Her eyes, usually full of life, looked terrified. She flinched when I reached for her. Then I saw it. A folded note attached to her collar. It read, "She was ours for a while. No name, no explanation. Just that." I brought her inside, cleaned her wounds, fed her, held her. But she wouldn't sleep. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and stare at the door, as if she expected someone to come back for her. I called the police, showed them the note. They were concerned, but there wasn't much they could do. No fingerprints, no leads. The vet said she had bruises, minor cuts, and trauma. Lots of it. Someone had taken her, kept her, and then brought her back. I installed cameras, triple-checked the locks, but the fear lingered. Whiskers slowly recovered. Bit by bit, she started acting like herself again, playing, purring, curling up beside me. But every now and then, she still stares at the door, and I still wonder, who had her, and why did they give her back? And now, something more subtle, but no less disturbing. The Quiet Boy. We moved into the old farmhouse in early spring. It sat alone at the edge of a field, surrounded by bare trees that looked like they were always reaching for something. The place was cheap, which should have been a red flag, but we were desperate. Our son, Max, didn't like it from the start. He was 4, quiet, sensitive. The kind of kid who talks to his toys and draws pictures of things he won't explain. 2 days after we moved in, Max told me about the quiet boy. He lives in the wall, Max said, pointing behind the headboard of his bed. I didn't think much of it. Kids have imaginary friends. It was probably his way of adjusting. But at night, we'd hear noises, tapping, whispering. Once, something that sounded like breathing under the floorboards. We tried to brush it off. The house was old, creaky, probably mice, probably pipes. But Max changed. He stopped talking at dinner, wouldn't sleep unless the lights were on, started drawing pictures of a boy with no eyes. One morning, I found him in the hallway, staring at the wall. He said, "You're not nice," Max whispered. "Who?" I asked. "The quiet boy." That night, we heard laughter, soft, right outside our bedroom door. I jumped up, thinking Max had gotten out of bed, but his door was closed. When I opened it, he was sitting in the corner, wide-eyed, shivering. "He said you shouldn't have moved here," Max said. He said the house was his. We brought in a priest. He didn't last 5 minutes. Walked into Max's room and came out pale, shaking. Told us to leave. Said something was wrong with the house. Something ancient. Angry, we left that night, never went back. Last week, I got a call from the realtor. Apparently, a new family moved in. They have a little girl, and she's been talking about the quiet boy in the wall. It was past midnight when Olivia heard the footsteps again. Soft, measured, dragging slightly, just like they had been every night for the past week. She lived alone in a small third-floor apartment with no neighbors above. The footsteps always began directly overhead, pacing slowly from one side of her ceiling to the other. Then they'd stop. She'd stare up at the plaster, breath held, waiting. They always resumed. A rhythm, a routine. On the third night, she called the landlord. "No one lives above you," he said. "That unit's been empty for months." She didn't sleep that night. By the 5th night, the steps were joined by something else, a low creaking, like wood being pulled apart. Then the scratching began. It wasn't loud, but deliberate. The sound of fingernails dragging along the floorboards, or maybe underneath them. She placed her phone on the nightstand and started recording. In the morning, the audio was silent. Not even her own breathing was there. On the 7th night, she decided to confront it. Holding a flashlight, she climbed the stairs to the empty unit above. The door was unlocked. The apartment was cold and pitch black. She stepped inside and the door slammed shut behind her. The flashlight flickered, then died. From the darkness ahead, the footsteps began again. This time, not on the ceiling, but the floor she stood on. They were coming toward her. Next story. Tyler always joked about ghosts until the cabin. He and 3 friends rented it deep in the woods for a weekend of drinking and fishing. The kind of place with no Wi-Fi, no cell signal, and definitely no neighbors. The first night was quiet, cold too. They joked about the draft and the strange creaking floorboards. But the second night was different. Around 2 a.m., the fire had burned down, and they were half asleep when the door to the cabin creaked open on its own. Nobody moved. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3. Software. Deliberate. They grabbed flashlights and checked outside. Nothing. Just the trees swaying in the wind. Back inside, they locked the door and tried to laugh it off. But in the morning, there were muddy footprints leading from the door to Tyler's sleeping bag. Only his. That night, Tyler woke up screaming. He said someone had been crouching over him, watching, breathing. They wanted to leave, but Tyler refused. He said they were overreacting. The next morning, Tyler was gone. No note, no tracks, no sign of struggle. Just the door, wide open, and a message scratched into the wood above his sleeping bag. he stayed too long. Next story. There's a rumor in my hometown. A dare, really. They say if you go into the old train tunnel at midnight and walk all the way to the other side without turning around, you'll hear them. The passengers. It's been abandoned for decades. No tracks. Just a black, damp tunnel carved into the hill. When I was 17, I tried it. I brought a flashlight. It barely pierced the dark. The air inside was wet and stale, like something had been rotting in there forever. Halfway through, I started hearing the whispers, faint, jumbled, like dozens of voices overlapping, crying, laughing, pleading. I kept walking. Then came the train horn, loud, echoing, so close I ducked, even though I knew it couldn't be real. The tunnel trembled, the flashlight flickered. That's when I saw the silhouettes. Dozens of people standing on either side of the tunnel, perfectly still, watching me. I told myself not to stop, not to turn around, but someone grabbed my wrist. Cold fingers, nails digging into my skin. I ran, didn't look back, didn't stop until I was out in the moonlight, gasping for air. There was a red handprint on my arm. It stayed there for 3 days. No one believed me, but I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the train coming. Next story. There's a mirror in my grandmother's attic no one is allowed to touch. She told me it's not a real mirror, whatever that means. As a kid, I thought she was just being weird. But one summer, curiosity won. I snuck up there alone. The mirror was beautiful, tall, gold-framed and spotless. I stood in front of it. At first, nothing happened. But then, my reflection blinked. I didn't. It tilted its head, smiled, and I ran. I told my grandmother. She just nodded and said, "That's why we don't look into it." She covered it with a black sheet and nailed the door shut. I always thought my grandfather's stories were just that, stories. He used to talk about the hollow beneath the barn, a space no one could see, but everyone could feel. When I was a kid, I'd laugh at the way his voice dropped when he said the word hollow, like it had weight. He died in his sleep last winter. Peaceful, they said. I inherited the house. Didn't want it, but selling it felt wrong. The barn still stood behind it, leaning, rusted, and full of creaks even on windless nights. The first week I moved in, I started hearing it. A knock, once, then twice, always from the barn, always at 3:17 a.m. I thought it was animals. I thought it was wind. Then I found the notebook. It had my name on the cover. Inside, handwritten notes, dates, times, descriptions of the sounds, knocking, scratching, even whispers, all written in my handwriting. But I had never seen it before. The last page said, "Don't go under the barn. If you're reading this, it's already watching you." Last night, I finally went out there. I don't know why. Curiosity maybe. Or maybe because something wanted me to. The hatch beneath the barn opened easily. Too easily. I didn't go down, but when I looked back toward the house, someone was standing in my bedroom window, watching me. And I live alone. Next story. They say the forest doesn't take kindly to liars. I thought it was a local myth, a way to keep kids honest. But when my younger sister disappeared after running off during a camping trip, the story felt less like a warning and more like a rule I had broken. We searched for days, then weeks. Nothing. No tracks, no items left behind. Just the feeling that the trees were watching. A year later, I went back, alone. Same path, same clearing, same time of year. And she was there, standing exactly where we lost her. Same clothes, same hair, same little pink shoes. Except she didn't age a day. She smiled when she saw me. "Where did you go?" I asked. Her smile didn't change. "I never left," she said. "You did." Her voice didn't sound like hers. It was too smooth, too flat. I reached out. She stepped back into the trees and vanished. All I brought home was her shoe, the same one we found the day she disappeared. Except now, it's brand new and dry, even though it rained all night. Next story, I bought the mirror at a garage sale. The man said it was not for the faint of heart. I thought he was joking. It was old, ornate, heavy. I figured I'd hang it in the hallway. But that night, it started. At first, it was subtle. I'd pass the mirror and see my reflection blink a half-second too late. Then it waved at me when I wasn't moving. I stopped walking past it. But that didn't stop it from watching. One night, I covered it with a sheet. I heard laughter from underneath. I moved it to the garage. The laughter followed. It didn't just reflect me. It remembered me. My clothes, my schedule, even how I stand. Then it began showing things that hadn't happened yet. Me arguing with my neighbor. A glass shattering in my kitchen. My front door wide open in the middle of the night. All of those things happened. Exactly as the mirror showed. Yesterday, it showed me sleeping. And a figure standing over my bed. Tonight, I'm not sleeping at home. And the mirror, it was already waiting at the motel. Next story. There's a town that doesn't appear on maps. Locals call it Red Hollow. You can only find it if you're not looking for it, usually after a wrong turn on a road that doesn't have a name. I got there just before sunset. The town looked frozen in time. Old cars, no cell signal. People who stared too long and smiled too wide. I stopped at the diner. Everyone in it turned to look at me when I walked in. One man stood up. Been a while since we had one. One what? I asked. He didn't answer. They served me coffee without asking what I wanted. It tasted like metal and something sweet, like syrup. I left cash on the counter. As I walked out, I saw it. A wall of missing person flyers, dozens of faces, all modern, all recent, and at the very bottom, a new one. My face, with today's date. I got in my car and floored it, but no matter how many turns I took, every road led me back to Red Hollow. The sun never set, and the people never blinked. It was one of those still, heavy nights when the world seemed to hold its breath. Only the hum of my car and the soft rustle of leaves broke the silence as I drove home past midnight. The road was empty, just the glow of distant streetlights stretching across the dark asphalt. But when I spotted a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror, trailing me relentlessly, the solitude I usually enjoyed turned into a slow-growing fear. No matter how many turns I took, they stayed behind me, matching my every move. Finally, desperate, I swerved into a side street, cut my lights, and waited, heart pounding. The headlights rolled past, and that's when I realized there was no car attached to them. Next story. It started as a harmless glitch, a random doorbell ring at odd hours. No one ever there when I opened the door. At first, I thought it was a prank, but night after night, it kept happening. I replaced the doorbell with a brand new one, equipped with a camera. Yet the ringing continued, even though the footage showed nothing but a dark, empty porch. One night, fed up, I waited just inside the door with the bat. The bell rang. I swung the door open and found deep footprints in the snow leading up to my door, then stopping cold, like someone had simply vanished. Next story, I woke up to an unusually quiet apartment. No signs of my roommate, Dave. His bedroom door was ajar, his things gone. On the fridge, a hastily scribbled note. Trust is fragile. What started as mild confusion spiraled into something worse when I found hidden cameras in the vents. Dave had been tracking my every move. Conversations, habits, even private moments. I never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear faint clicks, like a recording device hidden somewhere just out of sight. Next story. When my neighbor Robert disappeared, I didn't think much of it. He was a bit of a loner. But after weeks of silence and newspapers piling up at his door, I grew uneasy. One evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I slipped into his unlocked apartment. Everything was frozen in time. A half-eaten meal on the table, lights still on. In the center of his living room sat a single envelope addressed to me. Inside, one line, "You're next." I ran. I never went back, and I never found out what Robert had meant. Next story. Coming home to find my front door ajar was terrifying enough. Stepping inside and seeing everything overturned was worse. Drawers emptied, papers shredded, but nothing valuable was missing. Not money, not electronics. Just my journals, my personal notes, my memories. Recovery took months, but the feeling of being hunted never faded. Even now, sometimes, I find pages from my stolen journals tucked into random places. My mailbox, my glove compartment, even my pillowcase. Whoever took them is still reading my life, like a book. Next story. One morning, a missed call from an unknown number. No voicemail. I ignored it. But the calls kept coming. Silent at first. Then came the whispers. Descriptions of my clothes, my route to work, conversations I'd had. Someone was watching me. I changed my number, moved apartments, even quit my job. But it didn't stop. Last week, I got a new text. "Starting over won't save you." No number, just the message, floating like a ghost across my screen. Next story. Sorting through old trunks in my attic, I found an ancient diary. Henry Lawson's journal. A glimpse into a life long past. But the last entry shook me. It described, in chilling detail, my visit to a cafe just the day before, including what I ordered, what I wore, and the exact words I had spoken. The diary ended with one final sentence. "See you soon." I dropped it and backed away. But sometimes, flipping through the attic, I still feel eyes on me, waiting. Next story. Late one night, Sarah found a tiny hidden camera above her microwave. Heart pounding, she tore through her home. Another one behind the bookshelf. One tucked under the bed. Someone had been watching her for months. The police took the devices, assured her it was over. But Sarah still can't sleep without checking every room twice. Sometimes she swears she hears a faint click in the walls, like someone starting the feed all over again. Next story, I woke up tied to a chair, blindfolded, my mouth dry and heart racing. A dusty old journal lay on my lap. The pages were filled with riddles and instructions. I realized quickly. Solve them or stay trapped. Hours blurred into eternity as I pieced together clues, each more difficult than the last. Finally, my fingers trembling, I solved the last riddle. A door creaked open. I stumbled out into the cold night and realized I was deep in the woods, miles from anywhere. When my cousin Sarah bought a fixer-upper out in the country, she invited me to visit. The house was charming, but isolated. That night, we sat on the porch, drinking coffee, when we heard laughter coming from the woods. It wasn't playful. It was distorted, broken. Sarah said it happened often, and not to worry, but after midnight, the laughter got closer. It circled the house. We locked the doors, turned off the lights, and waited in silence, listening to the scraping sounds against the windows until dawn. Next story. My boss asked me to stay late one night to close the diner. After mopping the floors, I went to lock up, but every window was open again. I shut them all, double-checked the doors. 10 minutes later, I heard a tap, tap, tap at the window behind me. I spun around. No one there. The lights flickered, and when they came back on, there were wet footprints leading from the door all the way to the counter where I stood. Next story. When I was a kid, my grandma warned me never to whistle at night. She said it would call things you don't want to meet. I didn't believe her. One night, feeling rebellious, I stood on the porch and whistled into the darkness. At first, there was only silence. Then, faintly, I heard someone whistling back, mimicking my tune. The sound grew louder, closer. I ran inside and slammed the door. From the other side, the whistling continued, soft and persistent, until sunrise. Next story. My roommate and I found an old typewriter at a garage sale. It still worked, so we kept it in the living room. One night, as we slept, the clacking of keys woke us up. When we checked, no one was there, but a single sheet of paper had been typed on. It read, "I'm still here." We threw the typewriter away. A week later, it showed up in our kitchen, pristine and gleaming. And every morning after that, a new page waited, filled with desperate, pleading messages. Next story. I had a job delivering late-night groceries to rural homes. One customer always placed an order for exactly midnight. Their house was isolated, surrounded by thick woods. Every time I arrived, the porch light was on, but no one came to the door. I'd leave the groceries and drive off. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I peeked through a window and saw dozens of pale faces staring back at me from the darkness inside. Next story. After my divorce, I moved into a cheap apartment downtown. At first, everything seemed fine. Then, I started finding little notes tucked into my belongings, notes I hadn't written. Things like "don't trust them" or "they're watching." I changed the locks, installed cameras. Nothing. Then one night, I came home to find all the furniture rearranged and a single note on my pillow. "We let you think you were safe." Next story. My sister loved antique dolls. She had shelves full of them, staring with their glassy eyes. I hated sleeping over. One night, I woke up to the sound of tiny footsteps across the floor. I stayed still, heart pounding. Something cold brushed my hand. When I dared to look, every doll had moved, all now sitting in a circle around my bed, facing inward, smiling wider than I remembered. Next story. During a power outage, I lit some candles and settled in for the night. That's when I noticed something strange. The shadows on the walls didn't match my movements. When I lifted my hand, the shadow hesitated, then moved after. As I backed toward my bedroom, the shadows on the wall advanced, growing taller and darker, reaching out. I blew out the candles, plunged into darkness, but the feeling of the shadows never left. Next, we were out camping deep in the woods when we first heard it. A low, wobbling hum, almost mechanical, almost human. It came from beyond the trees, somewhere deep where no trails went. Curiosity got the better of us. We grabbed flashlights and headed toward the sound. After about 20 minutes, we stumbled into a clearing. At the center was a structure, a giant rusted metal tower covered in vines. It wasn't marked on any map, and none of us had ever heard about it. As we approached, the humming grew louder. Suddenly, our flashlights flickered and died. In the darkness, we heard footsteps, dozens of them, circling us. Someone, or something, whispered in a language none of us understood. We bolted back to camp, heart pounding. The next morning, we packed up. When we passed the spot on the way out, there was nothing there. No clearing, no tower, just endless, untouched forest. But the humming, it followed us all the way home. Next story. One evening while jogging, I passed an old man sitting on a bench, waving at me. I waved back out of politeness. The next night, he was there again. Same bench, same smile. But something was wrong. His eyes were pitch black. I stopped waving. Still, every night after, he waited for me. When I changed my route, he appeared at different corners, closer each time. The final night, he wasn't sitting anymore. He was following. Growing up, there was a small graveyard at the edge of town. Overgrown, forgotten. My friends and I used to dare each other to spend a night there. I finally accepted. Lying among the crumbling stones, I noticed a fresh grave, one that hadn't been there before. My own name was carved into the marker. I laughed it off, until I noticed the date of death. It was that night, and as the wind howled, I heard soft, wet digging sounds just inches from where I lay. Next story. One night, after work, I took a shortcut through a side alley. Halfway down, I realized it was eerily silent. No traffic, no voices, just the sound of my own breathing. And then a second set of footsteps, perfectly matching mine. I turned sharply, empty alley. Heart racing, I sprinted out. At home, I locked the doors, double-checked the windows. But when I sat down to breathe, I heard it again. Footsteps, pacing just outside my living room window. They stopped when I stopped breathing. Next story. At first, it was just small things. Misplaced keys, doors left slightly open. I blamed my own forgetfulness. But then I started waking up to the sound of someone whispering my name. I lived alone. One night, desperate, I set up my phone to record audio while I slept. The next morning, trembling, I listened. Hours of silence. Until 3:17 a.m., a low, gravelly voice whispered, "Wake up." I'm here. That same night, I found deep scratches carved into my bedroom walls. Next story. My grandmother always warned me about the old mirror in her attic, saying it didn't reflect the real world. As a kid, I laughed it off. Years later, after she passed, I found myself drawn to it. Staring into the glass, I saw something strange. My reflection smiling when I wasn't. It beckoned. When I blinked, it was gone. I tried to leave, but the attic door wouldn't budge. In the mirror, my reflection stepped forward, hand reaching toward the glass, and I swear I felt cold fingers brush mine. Next story. During a hiking trip, my group found a weathered wooden sign, the Path of Whispers. Intrigued, we followed it. The trees grew denser, the air colder. Then we heard it, faint voices urging us to keep going. One by one, my friends became distant, unresponsive, their eyes glassy. Only when I turned back, blocking out the whispers, did I escape. When I reported it later, the ranger just stared at me and said, "That path was closed 50 years ago, after a group vanished. None ever came back." Next story. Living in the city, noise is normal. But when all sound stopped, cars, birds, even the hum of electricity, I knew something was wrong. Outside, the world looked the same, but people were frozen mid-step, mid-breath, like mannequins. Only I could move. Panicking, I searched for anyone else, but the streets were endless and empty. Hours passed, days maybe. Finally, in a dusty alley, I met someone else, but their smile stretched too wide, and their voice cracked like broken glass when they said, "We've been waiting for you." Next story. My neighbor's little boy waved at the window every night. Sweet kid. I waved back. Until one night, his mother came over and asked if I had seen anything strange. I told her about the nightly waves. Her face went pale. She told me her son had died in that room 3 weeks ago. When she left, I stood at my window, heart pounding. Slowly, the curtains across the street pulled back, and the boy waved again, grinning wider than ever before. Next story, we moved into an old farmhouse, built in the 1800s. At first, the creaks and groans seemed normal, but soon we heard footsteps pacing at night, doors opening and closing on their own. One evening, I found muddy footprints leading up the stairs, child-sized, but no children lived nearby. We tried to bless the house, but during the prayer, every mirror shattered at once. We moved out after a month, but sometimes I still hear a child laughing under my bed. Next story. On a road trip through the desert, we picked up a hitchhiker, a pale woman with long black hair and no luggage. She barely spoke. When she finally did, her voice was so soft it was like the wind itself. She warned us not to stop until we saw the sun rise. We laughed it off. But when a thick, unnatural fog surrounded the car and something heavy slammed onto the roof, we kept driving, terrified. When the sun finally rose, the woman was gone, and on the dusty window was a single handprint, charred black. Next story. There's an old urban legend about a cursed song. If you listen to it, you die within 7 days. Dumb, right? My friends and I dared each other to find it online. We did. It was just static and low humming. Nothing scary. We joked and laughed until the calls started. Each night, a different voice. Distorted, sobbing, screaming. On the 7th night, I woke up to find every mirror in my house shattered, my phone cracked in half, and a note scrawled on my wall. You heard it. Now you belong to it. The man in the yellow room. There's a room in my grandmother's house we were never allowed to enter. It had a yellow door, no handle, just a keyhole, always locked. As a child, I asked her about it constantly. She'd always say, "That room belongs to him." I thought she was joking, some weird adult way of keeping me out. But when I turned 12, curiosity got the better of me. I stole the old brass key from her kitchen drawer and opened the yellow door. The room was empty, except for a single wooden chair facing the corner. The air inside was cold and still, like the world stopped the moment you stepped in. I didn't see anyone, but I felt someone. I ran out, heart pounding. Later that night, I asked my grandma again. She looked at me, more tired than angry, and said, "I told you, that room belongs to him." "Who's him?" I asked. Her voice dropped. "The man who used to live here, the one who never left." I never opened the yellow door again, but sometimes, when I visit, I see the chair is turned, facing the door, and someone is sitting in it. Don't blink. There's a statue in our town. Old, weather-worn, looks like an angel, but with no face. Just a smooth oval where the features should be. Everyone calls it the Watcher. I used to pass it every day on my walk to school. One morning, I noticed something strange. The statue had moved. Not far. Just a few inches. But it was enough. I told my parents. They brushed it off. Said it was my imagination. Then other kids started noticing it too. Every day, it would be in a slightly different position. Closer to the road. Closer to the fence. Closer to the path we walked. One night, I dared a friend to touch it. He did. The next morning, he didn't show up to school. They found him in the woods, eyes open, mouth wide. No marks on his body, just frozen, like he'd seen something terrifying. After that, no one went near the Watcher, but it still moves. And now, it's almost at the edge of my driveway. I don't walk to school anymore, and I never blink when I look at it. My uncle used to be a paramedic, quiet guy. Never talked about work. Until one Christmas Eve, after a few drinks, he told me a story. Said it happened in the early 90s. Cold winter night. He and his partner responded to a 911 call from an old farmhouse out in the county, middle of nowhere. Caller hung up before saying a word. They pulled up, sirens off. The house was dark. No lights, no movement. But the front door was open. Inside, the air was freezing. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, peeling at the corners. Family photos still hung, faded and crooked. They found a woman in a rocking chair in the living room, late 40s, pale, still. At first, they thought she was dead, but her eyes were open. She was whispering. He leaned in to hear. She kept repeating one phrase over and over. They're still in the walls. They called for backup, but the radio wouldn't work. Then the rocking chair stopped. She went silent, and from the walls, scratching, like dozens of tiny fingers clawing from the inside out. His partner bolted. He followed. When they looked back, the house was gone. Just an empty field, and their ambulance sitting in the middle. They never spoke of it again. But every Christmas, my uncle wakes up screaming. It started with the voice of a child. I live alone, in a small house on the edge of a rural town. It's quiet here, peaceful, or at least it was. The first night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard it, soft, high-pitched, coming from the hallway just outside the bathroom. Can you play with me? I froze. The hallway was empty. Every light was on. I live alone. I searched the house, heart pounding. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No windows open. Just silence. The next night, it happened again. This time, I was in bed. Can you play with me? The voice was right next to my ear. I turned on every light. I slept with the TV on, door locked, kitchen knife under my pillow. The third night, the voice changed. Why won't you play with me? The tone was no longer innocent. It was angry, accusing. I felt the air grow cold. The lights flickered. When I looked into the hallway mirror, I saw a small handprint appear behind me. No child, just the mark. I called a local priest the next morning. He didn't even flinch when I told him what happened. He just nodded and said, "It's been a while since she's had company." He didn't explain. He blessed the house, lit a candle and left. That night, I heard the voice again, but it didn't ask to play. It whispered, "You're mine now." And the candle the priest left behind was burning black. Next story. When I was a kid, my uncle told me a story that never left me. He said when he was 12, he got lost in the woods behind our family's farm. He wandered for hours, but eventually found a path, one he didn't recognize. Still, he followed it, hoping it would lead him home. Instead, it led him to a small cabin. The windows were dark, the door slightly open. He called out, but no one answered. Just as he turned to leave, he heard a voice from inside. "Come in." It sounded like our grandmother, but she'd died 2 years earlier. He ran. He told his parents, who searched the woods for days. No cabin, no path. Years later, he went back, older, braver, curious, and there it was. Same cabin, same door ajar, but this time, no voice. He stepped inside. The furniture was old, dusty, untouched for decades, but on the table was a photo of him, as a child, standing in front of the cabin. Only, he'd never seen it before that day. Next story, I bought a used phone from a pawn shop. It worked fine, until I checked the photo gallery. There were hundreds of pictures, all taken in the same dimly lit room. Most showed a chair, an empty chair. But in the last dozen images, a man appeared, sitting, bound, eyes wide in terror. The final photo was the worst. The man was gone, and someone, or something, was standing in his place. A tall, faceless figure, arms too long, body twisted. I deleted the images, or tried to. They came back, Each night, new ones would appear. Eventually, the photos started showing my apartment, my living room, my hallway. Last night's photo was of me, sleeping, and just behind me, that same faceless figure. Closer than ever. Next story. My wife talks in her sleep. Usually, it's just mumbling, nonsense words or soft groans. But one night, she sat up suddenly and whispered, "He's under the bed." I laughed it off, told her to lie back down. She didn't respond, just stared at me, eyes wide open, then slowly turned her head toward the edge of the mattress. "He's listening," she whispered again. I looked under the bed. Nothing, but when I turned back, she was still staring at the floor. And then she said in a voice that wasn't hers, "He likes it when you check." It started with a voice, just a whisper, low and slow, curling like smoke through the back of my mind. "Come see me." I was alone in the house. My parents were on vacation, and I was supposed to spend the weekend writing a paper. That night, I'd just gone to bed, lights off, laptop closed. The voice came again. "Come down. I'm waiting." I froze. It felt so close. Not outside, not in the hallway, but inside me. My chest tightened, and I got up, walked through the darkened hallway, and stood at the top of the stairs. Silence. Maybe I was dreaming. Then the stairs creaked. One step. Two. Someone was coming up from the basement. I ran back to my room, locked the door, called my best friend. No answer. I crouched in the closet with my phone, trying to dial again, when I heard breathing. Not from the hallway, from the closet. Right beside me. I threw the door open. Empty. Nothing there. But my phone? It started ringing. The screen said "Mom," but when I answered, it wasn't her voice. It was that same whisper. "You were too slow." I came up anyway. The line went dead. That was 2 years ago. I haven't been alone since. But sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps in the basement. One step. Two. He's always waiting. Next story. There's something wrong with the man in apartment 3B. I moved into this old building downtown a few months ago. Cheap rent, no questions asked. I didn't mind the peeling paint or flickering hallway lights. But 3B, always locked. No one ever comes or goes. One night, I was getting groceries when I saw him standing in the hallway, just watching me. He was tall, gaunt, and his eyes were the color of raw meat. I said hi. He didn't blink, just stared, head tilted like a dog trying to understand. Later that week, I passed his door again. From inside, I heard chewing, wet, slow chewing, and a faint metallic clink. I knocked. Silence. Next morning, there was a dark stain under his door. It smelled like rust and meat. I told the landlord. She went pale, said she'd talk to him. That night, she disappeared, just gone. No one's seen her since. Now, people say the lights on that floor flicker more often. Some tenants moved out. Last night, I found something on my doorstep. A tooth, not human. This morning, 3B's door was open. I went inside. The walls were covered in scratch marks, deep ones, like claws. In the corner sat a pile of bones, some small, some not. There was no sign of him, but I think I heard breathing behind the wall. And tonight, my door was unlocked. Next story. My little brother died last year, or at least we buried him. He was 5, sweetest kid you'd ever meet. He had this habit of knocking on my door 3 times every night before bed. Knock, 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 and saying, "Good night, dummy." Then he'd giggle and run to his room. After the accident, that silence tore me apart. 3 weeks later, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. "Good night, dummy." I jumped up, threw the door open. No one there. But I swear I heard giggling down the hallway. Mom thought I was hallucinating. Dad stopped talking altogether. But every night, same thing. 3 knocks, same phrase. Then things got worse. My room would be freezing. I'd wake up with scratches on my arms. My brother's toys started showing up in places we'd never put them. The bathtub, the kitchen sink, the attic. One night, I followed the giggle into the basement. There he was, sitting in the dark, pale, eyes wide, unblinking. "Why didn't you come with me?" he whispered. I couldn't speak. He stood up. His legs weren't right, like they'd bent backward. "I waited for you." I ran, locked the basement, but the knocking never stopped. Tonight, it's louder. Knock, knock, knock. And now, it's coming from inside my closet. Next story. We moved into our new house last spring. Everything seemed perfect until we found the crawl space. It wasn't on the floor plan, hidden under the stairs, sealed tight. Curiosity got the best of us. Inside, it was cramped, dusty, empty, except for a single wooden chair and a broken handheld mirror. And scratched into the wall were hundreds of tally marks, each one paired with a date. The last one was tomorrow. We sealed the crawl space and pretended we never saw it. But tonight, I heard the chair scrape across the floor beneath the stairs. Next story. Every night, I set my phone to charge on my nightstand, and every morning, it's somewhere else, under the bed, in the hallway, once even in the fridge. I live alone. Last night, I left it recording audio. This morning, it was in the bathtub, still recording. I listened. At 2:47 a.m., footsteps, then breathing, then my own voice whispering, "Don't look at me while I sleep." But I never said that. The first text was simple. "Watch your step today." I laughed it off. That afternoon, I slipped on a puddle and shattered my phone. Coincidence, I thought, until more texts came, predicting flat tires, cancelled meetings, even friendships ending. Then one day, the message read, "Today, someone you trust will betray you." That evening, my best friend lied to me about something so small it shouldn't have mattered. But somehow, it cracked everything between us, until all I had left was the cold warning blinking on my new phone. Told you. Next story. It was one of those heavy, breathless nights when the world felt suspended in time. As I drove home past midnight, the road stretched empty ahead, the trees barely whispering. In my rearview mirror, a pair of headlights appeared, following, unwavering. I sped up. They sped up. I turned down random streets. They stayed behind me. When I finally pulled into a crowded gas station, the car vanished like smoke into the night. I never saw the driver's face. I'm not sure I ever really wanted to. Next story. It started as harmless. The doorbell ringing once or twice at strange hours. Always nobody there. At first, I thought it was a prank. Then it happened even when I unplugged the bell. And then the camera I installed showed something worse. At 3:07 a.m., the footage would glitch, just for a second. And there, in the frozen static, a shadowy figure would stand at my doorstep, staring straight into the lens. Next story, I woke up to a strange silence in the apartment. My roommate Dave's room was wide open, his bed neatly made, but his things, wallet, keys, phone, were missing. On the fridge, a scrap of paper. "Trust no one." I thought it was some kind of joke until I found the hidden cameras in the smoke detectors and realized Dave hadn't left. He had been studying me, and he might still be watching. Next story. Robert, my neighbor, was quiet but friendly. When he vanished, I figured he had moved away without notice. Weeks later, a leaking ceiling forced the landlord to open Robert's door. Inside, everything was untouched. Food rotting, TV still on. On the coffee table was a letter addressed to me. It said, "You're next if you stay." I moved out that night. I still don't know who sent it. Next story. Coming home to find my door cracked open was terrifying, but stepping inside to see everything trashed, even worse. It wasn't just a robbery. Family photos were shredded. Childhood keepsakes were burned. Whoever broke in didn't want my things. They wanted to erase my life. I moved. I changed everything. But sometimes I find footprints near my windows, and they don't match mine. Next story, I always walked home from the late shift, 5 blocks through sleepy, dimly lit streets. One night, I noticed a second set of footsteps, just slightly out of sync with mine. Every time I stopped, they stopped too. My heart hammered, but when I turned around, there was nothing but mist swirling under the flickering streetlights. I sprinted the last 2 blocks. Later that night, when I went to hang up my coat, I found a muddy footprint next to mine, right inside the door. Next story, the text started simple. Random numbers, meaningless phrases. Turn around. Don't trust them. I blocked number after number, but they kept coming, from different senders. Then they got personal. Details about my family, my job, my private fears. I went to the police. They said it was probably a scam. It stopped for 2 weeks. Then, last night, I got a message that made me freeze. You're out of milk. Try buying 2 cartons next time. Next story. Sorting through dusty boxes in my grandmother's attic, I found an old photo album. Every picture showed strangers, smiling couples, children playing, birthday parties, all at houses I'd never seen. In the very last photo, tucked behind a torn page, was a picture of me, wearing clothes I didn't recognize, standing with people I had never met. The photo was dated 2 years before I was even born. Next story, I lived alone in a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls. One night, I heard scratching behind my bedroom wall. I banged on it. Silence. A few hours later, the scratching returned, louder, desperate. I called maintenance the next morning. They opened the wall and found nothing, except an old crumbling note wedged between the beams. It said, "It won't stay hidden forever." Next story. On a dare, my friends and I visited the abandoned house at the edge of town. Its windows were boarded, doors chained shut. But as we circled the back, a side door creaked open by itself. Inside, the air was heavy, wet with decay. We only stayed a few minutes before bolting. That night, I found a Polaroid photo slid under my front door. It was a picture of me standing in that house. And in the photo, there was a hand resting on my shoulder. Next story. When my brother died, I got his phone. Just a basic smartphone. Cracked screen. Almost dead battery. I charged it out of grief, I think. Wanted to hear his voice, see our old texts. Instead, I found something else. A folder labeled "Do Not Open." Inside were dozens of videos, all shot in the same dark room. Same angle, same man, my brother. But in each one, he looked more scared, more tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He'd just sit there and whisper to the camera, "They don't let me leave. They're in the walls." It's not a dream. In the last video, he was crying, whispering, "If you see this, don't look for me." Then he paused, stared at the camera, and said my name, like he knew I'd be watching. I tried to trace the files. Metadata said they were recorded 2 days after his death. Next story. There's a stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere they call the Disappear Mile. No signs, no exits. Just flat road through a dead forest. Truckers talk about it on forums. Say GPS freaks out when you're on it. Clocks freeze, radios turn to static. Some never make it out. I didn't believe it until I drove it myself. 5 minutes in, my phone died. Then the dashboard lights flickered out. Headlights dimmed. Fog rolled in. Thick. Too thick. I slowed down to a crawl. Then I saw a car in the distance, parked sideways. Hazard lights blinking. I stopped, got out, called out. No answer. Inside was a man, frozen in place, eyes wide open, mouth hanging in a silent scream. He looked mummified. I turned to run, and there were dozens of cars behind me, all empty, all facing the wrong way, all covered in dust, like they'd been there for years. My car wouldn't start. I ran until I saw daylight. When I finally found a gas station and told the clerk, he just said, "You're lucky. Most don't come back." Next story. My daughter hasn't spoken in 6 months. Doctors say there's no physical cause, no trauma, nothing they can find, but she won't say a word. She just draws, every day, hundreds of pages, always the same thing. A man in the corner of a room, black hat, no face. Sometimes he's closer, sometimes behind a window, a mirror, the door. Sometimes he's in our house. I asked her once who he was. She wrote one word on the page, listener. I've started hearing things at night, creaking floors, breathing. My name whispered so quietly, I think I imagined it, until last night. I looked in the mirror and saw him, standing behind me, but when I turned around, no one was there. My daughter was at the door, holding another drawing. She handed it to me. It was me, in the mirror, and the listener behind me, smiling. Next story, I used to rent a room from an old man named Clive. The house was huge, creaky, filled with antiques that looked like they hadn't been dusted since the 1800s. Clive mostly kept to himself, except for one rule he made very clear. Don't open the attic. Ever, no matter what you hear. I thought it was just some eccentric old man paranoia, until the scratching started. It came around 2 a.m. every night, soft at first, like a rat maybe, then louder, heavier, like something was pacing or dragging. I asked Clive about it. He just said, "Ignore it. It gets worse if you listen." I didn't sleep much after that. One night, I couldn't take it. The noise was unbearable. Thumping, breathing, a low, wet growl. So I crept upstairs and stood at the attic door. It was silent now, but something moved underneath. I reached for the knob, and Clive grabbed my wrist. He didn't yell, just whispered, "If you open it, you feed it." I moved out the next morning. 2 weeks later, I saw the house on the news. Clive was missing. They said the attic door was ripped off its hinges,